I want to talk about something that might seem obvious at first, but most salespeople live as if they've never heard it. Success is not an accident. Failure is not an accident. Both have causes, specific, identifiable, reproducible causes. Tracy calls this the law of cause and effect. And understanding it, really understanding it, changes everything. Here's how most people think about success. They look at the top performers in their company, the ones consistently at the top of the leaderboard, the ones earning 3, 4, 5 times what everyone else earns. And they assume luck. Right place, right time, right territory, better leads, natural charisma, some gifts they were born with. And because they believe success is random, because they think the top performers just got dealt a better hand, they don't study it. They don't ask what those people are actually doing. They just shrug their shoulders and hope that one day the dice will roll in their favor. That thinking keeps people stuck for years, sometimes for entire careers. The law of cause and effect says something different. It says that success leaves tracks, that if you do what successful people do consistently and repeatedly, you will eventually get the same results. Not immediately, not magically, but inevitably. The top performers in your field aren't doing something mysterious. They're doing specific things, thinking specific thoughts, making specific choices, having specific conversations. And if you study those patterns and apply them, if you reverse engineer what's working, you will rise. Tracy tells his own story of learning this the hard way. When he started in sales, he had nothing, no training, no background, no education. Someone handed him a stack of brochures and pointed at the door. Here's your cards. Here's your material. Go sell. That was entire training. So he did what he thought you were supposed to do. He worked hard, brutally hard, out from before dawn, cold calling, late at night, knocking on doors, making pitches, running from prospect to prospect. And for 6 months, he barely scraped by. Made just enough to pay rent on a tiny room, ate cheap food, wandered constantly. If he was cut out for this. Then one day, he did something that changed everything. He asked. He looked at the top salesperson in his office, a guy who was selling 5, 10 times as much as anyone else. And he asked him what he was doing differently. The guy barely seemed to work, rolled in around 9, had a few conversations, made a few calls, went to lunch. Yet he was crushing everyone. What was his secret? Turns out, he worked for a Fortune 500 company years earlier. They'd put him through 16 months of intensive sales training, real training. Not here's your card, there's the door. Structured, professional, comprehensive training. He'd learned a system, a method, a way of asking questions and guiding conversations that led naturally to the sale. And once Tracy saw it, once he understood what the cause actually was, everything shifted. He wrote down everything the top performer told him, started applying it immediately, and his results went up. Then he started studying, reading books, listening to audio programs, attending seminars. He realized that selling wasn't a gift, it was a skill, and skills can be learned. His results kept climbing. Here's the insight that hit me. When I first heard this story, your current results are not random. If you're stuck, there's a reason. If you've plateaued, something is causing it. And that might be uncomfortable to admit because it means you can't blame the market. You can't blame the leads. You can't blame the economy. The cause is somewhere in your approach, in your mindset, in your skills, in your daily habits. But here's why that's actually liberating. If the cause is internal, the solution is too. You're not at the mercy of forces outside of your control. You're at the mercy of your own choices. And you can change those. Every time I've plateaued in my career, and I've plateaued more than once, there was always a cause. Sometimes it was mindset. I'd gotten comfortable, lost the edge, stopped pushing. Sometimes it was a skill gap. Sometimes I thought I knew, but I actually didn't. Something I was avoiding because it was hard. Sometimes it was how I was spending my time, focusing on low value activities, avoiding the uncomfortable work. But once I found the cause and addressed it, the plateau broke. It wasn't magic, it wasn't luck, it was math. Change the input, change the output. When I was building my fundraising team in New Zealand, I noticed something. The reps who improved fastest were the ones who asked the most questions. They weren't embarrassed to say, I don't know how to do that. Show me. They watched the top performers closely. They asked what scripts they were using, what they said when someone objected, how they handled difficult moments. They were students, always learning, always studying. And then they went out and practiced, applied what they learned, tested it in the field. The ones who stayed stuck were the ones who assumed the top performers were just naturals. They didn't study the cause, so they never got the effect. Here's the lesson. If someone else in your industry selling the same product to the same market under the same conditions is earning 3 or 4 times what you earn, that's proof. Proof that it's possible. Proof that the skills exist. Proof that the results are achievable. Your only job is to find out what they're doing and do it yourself. This isn't about copying blindly. It's about recognizing that success has a structure, that there are principles underneath the performance, patterns underneath the results. And once you learn those principles, you can adapt them, make them your own, apply them in your way with your personality in your market. But start with the cause, not hoping, not wishing, studying. Here's what I want you to do. Find someone in your industry, maybe in your own company, who's performing at the level you want to reach. Reach out. Ask if you can buy them lunch. Ask them what they do differently, what they focus on, what habits they've built, what mistakes they've made that you can skip. Most top performers will share. They remember being where you are. They remember struggling. And most of them are generous with what they've learned. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to find someone who's already built one and ask how they did it. That's the law of cause and effect in action. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. But here's the final piece. Knowing what to do isn't enough. Studying success isn't enough. At some point, you have to commit, really commit, not halfway, not when it's convenient, fully. And that means paying the price of success. That's where we're headed next, because everything we've talked about, the inner game, the thermostat, the fear, the transfer, the winning edge, the law of cause and effect, it all comes down to this. Will you do the work? Let's talk about what that actually means. Hey, thanks for checking out this clip from the Sales Evolution Lab podcast. If you found value in this lesson, be sure to hit subscribe to evolve for the future of selling. And if you want the full breakdown, the deeper stories, the practical toolkit, check out the full episode. Just click the video on the screen, and I'll see you there.